Another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast is on the air. You're looking at two guys who know that wrestling is scripted, and we talk about wrestling every single week. We well know aware that it is quote-unquote fake, but that can't go for Michael Caputo. He is the Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs for the Department of Health and Human Services. He was appointed to make an ad campaign to describe the response that President Trump had towards COVID-19 with celebrity involvement. One of the celebrities on his list was Ronda Rousey. But in the notes for trying to pick Ronda Rousey to be on this ad campaign, he put some things that maybe might keep her off of, like her criminal record. The time on April 1st, 2019, she was arrested on Monday Night Raw. According to Michael Caputo, getting arrested on Monday Night Raw, I mean, that definitely is a negative towards her character. What do you think, Brandon? Do you think that arrest on Monday Night Raw for Ronda Rousey is really negative towards her character, or does Michael Caputo need to realize wrestling is scripted?
Oh my God, she is such a terrible person because she got arrested on Monday Night Raw. I just cannot believe it.
That shows her to attack Becky Lynch.
Huh? She's a terrible person.
That shows her to attack Becky Lynch for sure. Don't do that again, especially now that she's.
Yeah, no, Ronda Rousey's a terrible person.
So we'll talk more scripted wrestling for those who understand wrestling scripted in a scripted format as the Heel to the Face podcast starts right now.
So silence your cell phones, hold your applause, and tune into the truth.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
Getting beat up by 9 guys in Syracuse, to me, there's not a whole lot of shame in.
From the 315 to the world, this is the Heel to Face podcast.
The cream of the crop! Wow, man, freaked out!
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Heel to the Face.
I said, are you ready?
From Armory Square in downtown Syracuse, New York, let's send it now to Brandon and Jared.
Bad luck seems to be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
So this is another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast. We're joined as always with Brandon Clements. You can find him on social media at Icebreaker21, myself at KRock Jared, and most importantly, the show at Heel to the Face. Wherever you follow and listen or watch the program, make sure you subscribe to get notifications sent right to your phone or wherever you want to find out new episodes are uploaded so you can listen to us each and every week as we're coming to you the week of Halloween. So there's really no better way to start than with a show that took place last night as we're recording. It's Halloween Havoc. And Brandon, I can start by saying one of my favorite shows of the year. I thought this show, Halloween Havoc, the NXT Weekly USA Special, was just top to bottom flawless. And I think what I really enjoy about this Halloween Havoc show is the fact, I put it out on Twitter, that if I was going to show wrestling fans or people who aren't wrestling fans, let me speak, a show to get them to be wrestling fans, it would be this. And that is saying a lot because right now we are in a pandemic where there is not the typical fans. And normally I would pick something from the Attitude Era, a WrestleMania, but I'm picking something that took place at the Performance Center to show people who aren't wrestling fans why they should be wrestling fans. And I think that's saying a lot because right now during the pandemic, there isn't really anything I would say. This hit it out of the park, fans or no fans.
Yeah, and actually, to correct you, Capitol Wrestling Center, I believe, is where they have it. Right?
Well, it's the renamed Performance Center.
Yeah, but okay. To your point, though, Halloween Havoc was one of the best shows of 2020. It was from top to bottom. I agree with you. It was a great show. There was one name we were talking before the show. There's one thing, and more importantly, there's one name that I think a star was made on Halloween Havoc, and that person is Raquel Gonzalez. I thought she had a fantastic match with Rhea. I thought that was the match of the night. There was a lot of great moments, but that to me was the match of the night. Raquel Gonzalez is the real deal. I would watch those two wrestle again. It was just a lot of fun. That young lady is going to be an NXT Women's Champion very, very soon. You're going to see her on the main roster at some point. We talk about this all the time. In the future, the future is bright for her. She's got this great look, and she's taller. She's a very strong woman, and with everything going on in the world, strong women it's a big thing. And she is kicking some serious butt. I love it.
Than Rhea Ripley, who is 5'10" herself. But overall, I think the women's division entirely as a whole last night, obviously with the match with Rhea Ripley, and then obviously the main event with Candice LeRae and Io Shirai. I think that tore the house down, showed that obviously that women can main event easily. I mean, that was no doubt the main event match. Candice LeRae going through the ladder there when you thought maybe she was going to be the winner, and that was quite the fall. That's a fall that a lot of guys don't take, and when guys take that fall and they break the ladder, I mean, that's a holy shit moment. And yet here's Candice LeRae, all 5'2" of her, going through the ladder. I think that show, obviously, the reason I said that I would show people who aren't wrestling fans that show is because it hit on a lot of markers. WWE stands for World Wrestling Entertainment, and I think it hit on that markers. And I think when it hit on the marker of, I like the set. Obviously, the set wasn't too crazy or radical. They didn't use the graveyard near the entranceway, but they incorporated it. The soundtrack for the show, great. It incorporated the horror theme perfectly. I mean, Marilyn Manson, Halloween goes hand in hand. It was the concise 2-hour format of being a televised show. Everything, there was no wasted segments. You had one segment in the back with Drake Maverick that was the funny segment. You had one talking segment out at the ring that served a great purpose with Pat McAfee and Pete Dunne turning heel and joining Pat McAfee's crew right there. That's your only talking segment, and it was not a wasted talking segment. It wasn't an interview with some no-name NXT guy about a feud down the line. It had like immediate implications. It was something that I felt that talking segment could have been something that ended NXT. They could have went off the air with that talking segment. It was that good. And then all the matches there weren't too many of them, but each of them had a uniqueness. They had something different. You had the cinematic match, I guess, if you will, that ended up coming back to the ring with Dexter Lumis and Grimes. You had.
I got to cut you off real quick. I remember when we've talked about cinematic matches, you always said, why don't we finish it in the ring? They did it. They did a great job of that. We were right, though. We knew it was going to be cinematic, but I'm glad they did it and they finished it in the ring. Not even to cut you off, but I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, no, I like how they finished it in the ring, but they changed it up a little bit. For a second, I wasn't even aware that was the same ring. I thought maybe that was like a backstage area because they changed the apron real quick. They blackened out the crowd and they added the smoke. So for a second, I was like, is this another set? They made the ring look really good. But the matches in the ring, obviously, uniqueness all their own. Started off with Johnny Gargano becoming the 2-time North American champion in a great match. Shotzi Blackheart was like a host. I felt like this made me feel like, and you might be too young for this, but back in the day, TNN Friday night was their Friday night, thrill zone where they had roller derby, they had slam ball, they had ECW, they had all these things, and it was like an adrenaline. You had monster trucks, and it was like an adrenaline rush. And a lot of times you would have like a host. And it goes back to maybe even the MTV days. You remember when like a whole night's worth of programming would have a host, and every time they'd go to commercial, they'd be like, well, how about that right there on Teen Mom? But stay tuned because Jackass is coming up next. I'm your host. They'd have like a between show host. And that was like Shotzi Blackheart, when one match ended, getting you hyped up to not turn away at the commercial break. She'd play the Marilyn Manson music. She'd remind you, in a very cinematic, very wrestling way that there's a big match coming up, and it got you like thrilled up, like, oh yeah, I forgot coming up next. Spin the wheel, make the deal. Don't turn that channel. Very Halloween-esque of like a host of even an old Halloween kind of back in the day when they would do old Halloween movies, and you'd have someone be the host of the movie, and at commercial break they'd be like, is she going to get out alive? Stay tuned for the conclusion of this Halloween movie. So a very throwback there. All around great show.
Yeah, Shotzi was the perfect host for this event. I mean, she's got the perfect look for the Halloween season. That's just part of her gimmick. They didn't expose her too much, but they did enough. It was a happy medium for me, and like you said, they put her on enough where we knew she was still there, where she was the official host. But they didn't put her on screen forever, which would have made it a little bit annoying. They got to her when they needed to. They made it good, and Shotzi did a great job, and she even got involved at the last match, the main event of the night. So overall, I thought she did a great job with that. I thought the whole set from top to bottom. I love the beginning. When you had for Damian Priest his entrance, you had the shredding guitar going on, and I don't know if you noticed, but also I'm a big classic rock guy. one of the greatest musicians of all time. We lost Eddie Van Halen not too long ago, and this guy's shredding out, and I look and I see EVH on the guitar, and I was thinking, man, Eddie has got to be loving this up above, man. That guy was shredding. That was it was fun. I thought Damian Priest's entrance was really good. With the guitar solo, I liked Io Shirai's entrance as well. I thought that was pretty good. Overall, man, I'm very pleased, and I can't nitpick. I thought everything was really good.
Yeah, I mean, none of the matches I don't think were really 5-star matches, but I mean, wrestling is supposed to be entertainment. It's supposed to be fast-paced. It's supposed to be something that doesn't maybe all just make you think you're watching, armbar and collar elbow, that kind of stuff. It's supposed to be like it was last night. It was a mix of entertainment. It was a mix of silliness. It was a mix of spookiness. It was a mix of wrestling. It was like athleticism mixed with just all around like a movie. It was entertainment at its finest. I don't want to harken it back to like what SmackDown was or Raw was back during the Attitude Era, but that's what that was. That's what got me to be a wrestling fan. It wasn't the wrestling. It was the quick match followed by the Godfather coming out with some hose, followed by the Undertaker sacrificing Stephanie McMahon, followed by the oddities coming out, just a whole mix of like, followed by a rock concert with Motley Crue or Jericho coming out back in the day. All that kind of mixed together is what got me to watch wrestling, and that was perfect last night. I think Halloween horror movies, I mean, it harkens to spookiness, it harkens to costumes, it harkens to lavish productions, and that's what wrestling is. It's all of those things. And keeping on the Halloween Havoc, the Scream outfit that helped the person who dressed up in the Scream outfit that helped Johnny Gargano win the match tried helping Candice LeRae win the match. Rumors are that it was Indy Hartwell. Now, she wasn't actually there regardless of how this storyline goes because she was one of the people that was in the gym when they had a COVID outbreak in the Performance Center a few weeks ago, so she was home on quarantine. But that doesn't mean that WWE doesn't necessarily want to go forth with the storyline of having her be the one in that Scream outfit. Obviously, when she's done with quarantine, they can reveal that it was her all along because wrestling is wrestling. So what do you think about Indy Hartwell helping Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae?
Well, Ronda Rousey's bad though, according to that Caputo guy. Remember in the intro? So she's so bad because she got arrested on Monday Night Raw. So I mean, Indy Hartwell, it's got to be her, right? No, I mean, even with COVID, I mean, it's got to be her. No.
Yeah, I mean, if it is Indy Hartwell, well, technically Michael Caputo would say it's not Indy Hartwell because of the fact that she's home quarantining at this time and doesn't realize that as long as they didn't show her face, she could still technically in the wrestling world have been there because it can be played by someone else. He would also have been the person that would have been nitpicking everyone on Retribution, thinking that these guys are the specific people in Retribution and then they can't change going down the line who was in Retribution because, well, they showed it. They can't just make things up on the fly. This isn't a taped program. This is all live and authentic. That is real. That can't be Kane because Dr. Isaac Yankem was Glenn Jacobs, and that can't also be Kane. So they can't be the same person, according to this Michael Caputo guy we were talking about earlier.
Mayor of Knox County, right? No way, not a chance.
Yeah. Right? That's not the same guy because Kane and Glenn Jacobs because Glenn Jacobs' face isn't burned, so that's not the same guy because Kane's face was burned, so it can't be. But what do you again think about Indy Hartwell? Do you think joining up with Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae? And what do you think about the fact that they had her intervene in the women's match, but Io Shirai still won? And we didn't have exactly what we thought we were going to with All or Nothing in the titles.
Yeah, that was weird. That split was a little different. I mean, I'm okay with it because I do love Io Shirai. I think her as a women's champion, I think is a good thing for NXT. But it's to me, it was a little odd. I think if anything, they should have kept it on. They should have kept the title on the North American title on Priest, and then obviously Io keeps her title. I think it should have been all or nothing. I don't know. I don't like it dragged out where he's got the title, but wait, she doesn't. It ruins the aura for me. Like it needs to.
I kind of like it because it saved the predictability of either All or Nothing. We literally thought it was going to be All or Nothing, so they kind of took, and especially with the person dressed in the Ghostface Scream outfit later in the night coming to help Candice LeRae, we thought, oh, this is a foregone conclusion. she's going to win the women's belt. And then all of a sudden, with Io Shirai retaining there at the end, it took me for a swerve, because how often do you see people, intervene and help someone on their behalf, and then it doesn't help them? I mean, that's kind of more of a rarity in the world of wrestling, especially when they've already done it earlier in the night to a positive reception for Johnny Gargano. So I like the idea that I didn't see it coming. Anytime in wrestling, if I don't see it coming, I don't care about my predictions. If it's something that takes me for a loop, I like it. So I didn't see that coming. I don't know where they go from here now that they're, Johnny Gargano's champ and Candice LeRae isn't. So I like to see anything that makes it so I don't see the prediction in the end.
Sure, I'll give you that. The thing is, like, I wouldn't have taken the title off Priest. I think Priest should have kept the title. I mean, Gargano's fine without the title. Priest, I think was still. I think it was. The title reign was still. I think a little short for me. I mean, do you think Priest is going to the next level? Do you think he's going to go challenge NXT?
No, I don't think anyone's going to the next level. From NXT at this current time. I think now
NXT Championship. I mean.
I don't even see that. No, I see maybe this feud right now with Johnny Gargano continues just for a little bit. I'm not saying you can't go to the next level sooner rather than later. But I feel like give it a few minutes before he does that. I feel like things are going to play out a little bit more with Johnny Gargano in the mid card. So I definitely see that. But one more thing I want to talk about Halloween Havoc, and we glossed over it in the whole production of everything going on, and when I talked about the segment that could have closed the show. Your man, Pat McAfee, killed it on the mic, and then Pete Dunne comes out, and joins his faction. What are we calling his faction? Is it
I don't know. I haven't heard anything yet. I haven't had a chance to scour the internet and or Twitter. I haven't seen any of that. So I will just say this: whatever they're gonna call themselves, it's fantastic. Pat McAfee, like you said, he crushes it on the mic. He's super entertaining, and you know what? Oni Lorcan and then Danny Burch, they need somebody that has that personality that can be the mouthpiece, because those two guys can be. They destroy everybody in the ring. I'm so glad they're tag champions. They've been grinding out for years and years. I just don't think they have the personality, and I think Pat McAfee can be that voice and maybe work with them and say, hey, why don't we do this, and this, and maybe they could be really cool guys in the back, but they just don't know how to show their personality in the ring or on the camera. So maybe this will finally get their personalities out. So I love it. I love what they did, and most importantly, Pete Dunne is back after a 7-month layoff. Like, good to see.
Yeah.
And guess what? I don't know if you noticed, but it looks like Pete hasn't missed a workout since he's been in quarantine. He looks like he's in the best shape of his life. I think this whole crew is absolutely fantastic. And you're right. You could have ended the show right there, and I would have said, cool, I'm all right with that. Give me more next week.
Yeah, and I say this all the time, and we can't have a show without me saying this or really stepping on WrestleMania 36, even though it's like 8 months ago now. But people, and this adds another element of the many elements and the many examples I love to give. But people say, WrestleMania was what it was, and obviously if they postponed it, it wouldn't have been any different. But last night proved that that's a lie, because the Capitol Wrestling Center, whether you like to, call it that or not, is the Performance Center. And you know what? Last night showed us that if WrestleMania would have waited a few months or would have, had some time, what they could have done. Because here's the thing, I wouldn't even bought it myself. I would have said, you know what, if they waited a few months, they still needed to get out of the performance. If they would have had that kind of setup, if they would have had that kind of, at least like with the wrestlers still there providing a semi-crowd, which is enthusiastic, creates the noise, does what a crowd needs to do, even if it's not a large group of people. If they would have had WrestleMania look similar to that, again, because WrestleMania it is entertainment. Part of what makes WrestleMania what it is not the wrestling, it's the spectacle. So last night showed that, WrestleMania actually could have been in the performance still and been better than what it was, because last night was in the Performance Center, and it was one of the better shows of 2020, without a doubt. And it hit on all the marks for people who aren't wrestling fans in the ring, who just want to see some adrenaline pumping action that, keeps them entertained for 2 hours. Last night they did that in the same place they did WrestleMania. And let me tell you, you telling me the Capitol Wrestling Center and the Performance Center they use for WrestleMania look like two different places, night and day, what they did there, especially with Halloween Havoc and the smoke and the sound and everything. They just, overall, even the backstage, if I'm not mistaken, WrestleMania didn't even really have any backstage segments per se, other than some interviews. They didn't like with Drake Maverick last night, doing the NWO Hogan with, the Giant and the Yeti and the Shockmaster. That is what wrestling is all about. From the Performance Center, nailed it out of the park. And another event that I think hit it out of the park, but Halloween Havoc was more recent, so we talked about that. But can't forget this past Sunday night, Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Thought it was a great show overall. I thought there was really no negative in my eyes anywhere in the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. The Roman Reigns match kicked things off. I thought that was a great way to kick off the pay-per-view. And I think the Roman Reigns character, it's just, as somebody put it, I think I read on Twitter, you see these people in the back writing some awful wrestling, and then you see what they do with Roman Reigns, and you see exactly how they can write some good stuff, because the match itself was okay, but the story with Roman Reigns, the new tribal leader, I think it's brilliant with what's going on with Roman Reigns right now.
100%. And I do want to slightly disagree. I won't say fully disagree with you with the Roman Reigns thing. I thought the match was pretty good for what it was. It was pretty brutal. I thought Uso did a great job for what he did. And I really liked the way they ended it, where the Usos, the brothers were out, and the only reason why Jay said he quits is because Jimmy was in the getting the hold. He was getting choked out, and you see them and they're selling it so well, where they're trying to grab each other's hands and reach for each other, help me, you know what I mean? It was so dramatic, and I enjoyed it. You could see the reaction, you could see them. The emotion in that ring, in that moment. To me, it was the whole. It checked all the boxes for me. It doesn't have to be a Dave Meltzer, even though he doesn't give WWE any 5 stars really. But it wasn't a 5-star wrestling match. But for me, it was 5-star entertainment, and that was what you want to do with a guy like Roman Reigns. And also, that helps make the Usos even better, because guess what? If you're hitching the wagon with Roman Reigns at this point, anybody that he works with is going to get a nice Roman Reigns rub at this point. It was absolutely fantastic. I don't care what anybody says. That needs to continue. The tribal chief, and at the end, he gets laid, so to speak. Not that kind of laid, but laid from the Wild Samoans. That was cool.
When this first started, I'll admit, I thought that this whole Jey Uso thing was kind of just like a throwaway, because he just became champion and he needs to get some wins under his belt to kind of build himself up. I didn't think anything of the Jey Uso challenge to Roman Reigns. I thought it was just, like I said, a throwaway, kind of just trying to build him up, make him more of a heel. But what they've done with him facing Jey Uso 2 months in a row, while, yeah, Jey is not going to become the champion, it wasn't a throwaway. It wasn't like Brock Lesnar on his year reign as champion back in 2002, just happened to have a pay-per-view match against Hardcore Holly for the belt kind of throwaway month. Or back in the day when Big Show was the champ and Big Boss Man challenged him at Armageddon 99 for the belt that 1 month. It wasn't one of those kind of, just 1 month feuds to kind of get the other guy going. It was something that legitimately was entertaining. And yeah, well, I just said Jey Uso was never going to win the belt. The entertainment factor was top notch.
Yeah, and I think the whole night was pretty good, and I was very surprised by the Bayley finish as well. I'm surprised. I said it on last week's show. I thought Bayley was going to retain, and I really thought she was going to roll. They're going to roll this. They're going to keep fighting until WrestleMania, I think, anyways. I didn't think they were going to put the belt on Sasha at this point. Not that I'm against it by any means. I think sometimes it's time to run a new course. So I do like it, but I was a little surprised. What was your take on that?
Yeah, no, I was surprised by the finish. Overall, of the 3 Hell in a Cell matches, I think that was the best of the 3 Hell in a Cell matches right there with Bayley and Sasha Banks. I like the storyline. I like Sasha winning it because, again, I didn't see that coming. You do kind of wonder where this is going to go, if this is going to go all the way to WrestleMania with them rematching. Obviously, Charlotte Flair right now, is not around. Becky Lynch is not around. Ronda Rousey's not around. So you're kind of wondering if any of these three people come back in the mix before WrestleMania, or if it's just going to be the Bayley-Sasha show. But another match on the card where we didn't really see a title change coming, but I guess it had to happen. They wanted to wait till there was fans, but you can't wait forever. And that was Randy Orton defeated Drew McIntyre, became the new WWE champion. It seems like he's got a bunch of challengers now. Obviously, Miz beats Otis with Tucker turning heel on Otis. Tucker now moving back to SmackDown, despite what the draft happened, so they can continue that feud. But right now you got the Miz with Money in the Bank, and I think that elevates Miz very well because he's kind of been, kind of just treading water for a little bit, not doing much. When Miz isn't in, I know people don't like Miz in the world title picture, but when Miz isn't in the main event picture, he is a mid-carder at the perfect definition of mid-carder. Yeah. He's just not a ton going on that is really entertaining with him. But when he had the feud in 2017, going to WrestleMania with John Cena, when he was the champion, and now that he's Money in the Bank again, it put Miz back in the conversation of us talking about him. And then obviously on Monday Night Raw, the Fiend Bray Wyatt shows that, he wants to be in the title picture as well. So this is shaping up to be quite an interesting run for Randy Orton. I feel it's going to all culminate at WrestleMania with a rematch against Edge, with the belt maybe on the line. But, keeping us entertained till then, he's got a few challengers, and they're not going to see any of them at Survivor Series, obviously, because Survivor Series is the new bragging rights pay-per-view, where it's Raw versus SmackDown for brand supremacy. So it's going to be Randy Orton versus Roman Reigns at Survivor Series in a champion versus champion match. But when the championship, again, is on the line, whether that be a TLC in December or Royal Rumble, I think Randy Orton's got some interesting challengers coming his way.
Yeah, and I'll start right from the top. I mean, I wouldn't consider it a challenger, but just an upcoming opponent. I'm intrigued to see what happens with him and Roman Reigns. With Roman Reigns being so on fire right now, and I think Randy Orton, you can argue he's on a pretty good roll. I mean, he just won the title. I think two bulls. I think they're two lead dogs. I mean, yes, they have the championships. I get that, but they are even without the titles. Those guys are top dogs. We all know that. They're always at the top of the food chain. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. I assume Roman Reigns is going to win the match. I don't think they're going to make Randy Orton look bad by any means. I think that match coming up here at the upcoming Survivor Series pay-per-view could be a very, very entertaining match. So I don't want to overlook that. I know he's got some challengers, Randy Orton, coming up, with the Fiend, the Miz. I know he's got a few ahead. Well, let's not look too far ahead, because I want to see him and Roman Reigns lock horns and just go at it and steal the show.
Talking AEW from last night real quick, some big things that happened is that the finals of the World Title Contender Tournament are now set. Hangman Page, Kenny Omega both won their matches, so they'll be fighting at Full Gear. It was announced that MJF and Chris Jericho will be fighting at Full Gear. MJF wins the match against Jericho. He can join the Inner Circle. They had their town hall debate, and it pretty much was just a long promo for Chris Jericho to say, you've faced all challengers and beat all challengers, but you haven't beat me. And so that sets up Jericho versus MJF at Full Gear. And FTR and Young Bucks had a little interview segment as well with Excalibur, where the Young Bucks said, similar to what we've seen with Cody Rhodes, I think this is a theme for AEW, and that the Young Bucks are saying if they don't win the tag belts at Full Gear, they're never going to challenge for them ever again. So it's weird. So it's Cody Rhodes never challenging for the world belt again, and the Young Bucks are never going to challenge for the tag team belts ever again. That's quite a thing to kind of put out there forever in a brand new company of AEW that's only been around for a year. 3 of your founders, who are your biggest stars, will never be challenging for the belts in which they should probably be holding to pretty much take hold of the show. Do you like the storyline that they pull out, with Cody Rhodes and now the Young Bucks?
No,
never
challenge again. I don't like it at all. I think it's stupid. And yes, I'm rocking, as you can see here, the Inner Circle T-shirt, of course, I got from Pro Wrestling Tees. I thought that entire segment, that long, very, very long, I just didn't like it. That segment just sucked. That town hall was annoying. And honestly, from what I gathered and what I saw and what I read, I don't think AEW was that good last night. That's just, I'm just putting it out there. I didn't, from what I saw and what I read online from people that watched the show, the Orange Cassidy Cody Rhodes thing wasn't that great. It was, it lacked substance. I think the only match I would say one of the only matches of the night that would be noteworthy that you could put it in comparison to maybe a Halloween Havoc that we had literally at the same time was the Kenny Omega and Penta match. That was a great match. That was an A+ match. I know Meltzer will probably love it. He'll say that was better than the whole Halloween Havoc. You know how that goes. But again, it sets up Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, former tag team champions. I'm excited for that part of it. But to be honest with you, I feel like some of these matches I just thought this week were kind of, pardon the word, but I thought they were duds.
I felt like the 2 hours, definitely. The Halloween Havoc, the 2 hours, they found a way to make 2 hours go by much quicker than AEW did. They won this week. When it comes to viewers. They won, I think, by 150,000 viewers. So NXT got the win on AEW. They don't have Halloween Havoc every single week, and I'm not going to say that show NXT is literally like that every single week, but give it to WWE. I don't. One thing I'll harken back to Halloween Havoc is I don't understand why and when they pick things to be specials and things to be pay-per-views. Like the In Your House takeover, that was a pay-per-view, that wasn't an NXT TV special. Halloween Havoc, that could have been a takeover. That could have been a theme for a takeover, but they chose to do it for a TV show instead. I don't know what goes through their mind and when they pick and choose things like that. Same with AEW, why they make some pay-per-views, and why sometimes they make Bash of the Beach a TV show.
Let me jump on that real quick. So, I know I said earlier in the show, I'm not going to nitpick anything. I'm going to take that back just real quick. You made me think of something. Why wouldn't you put Halloween Havoc, NXT, presents Halloween Havoc on Saturday, considering Halloween's on Saturday this year? I was just thinking about that. That might have been better, right? No?
I don't know if it would have been better. I think overall, it was if it was still gonna be the TV show, it was perfect on the night that it was on because of the fact it's going against AEW, and they like the fact that they can go against AEW and they can beat them this week in the ratings. I will say, and if you bring up a nitpick, I'll bring up one nitpick as well. Johnny Gargano actually saved the show because I wasn't a fan of that pumpkin. I begged and pleaded. All I wanted for the set to have was a pumpkin like the old 90s Halloween Havocs in WCW, and they had a pumpkin, and it was lame. It wasn't scary looking. It was literally just like a kid-friendly jack-o'-lantern, but obviously Johnny Gargano cut that up right away. I was hoping for a cooler pumpkin, like one like we saw in the 90s Halloween Havoc set, with like a more evil, like the ones you saw on the video boards in the background for Halloween Havoc itself, like a more ominous, scary pumpkin. But either way, that's my only nitpick of the night. I got a few nitpicks. Well, hold on. Yeah.
Real quick. Not a nitpick, but it's something I was just thinking about. When I watched the Santos Escobar match, was he wearing the Rey Mysterio get-up from Halloween Havoc 97? Did I catch that right?
You know what? You might have, because I can't think of it. I remember the match was pretty decent. That was probably the only non-important match of the whole night. I felt like that, you really had to be sitting there watching it live. And so I was obviously not sitting there watching it without running back and forth between rooms. So you might be right on that one because I watched it live. And other than that, every other match I had to sit down and watch and treat it like a movie. Don't bother me. But that was the one where I could get up and go get the popcorn. But a pay-per-view that definitely suffered from not having a crowd. Saturday night, Impact Wrestling's Bound for Glory pay-per-view. I think it's kind of funny with Impact Wrestling because they film every weekly show at a television studio in Nashville. And it's a TV studio. And the one thing I find kind of funny about that is they're not making really great television. I don't know why they can't have something similar to what we see in the Capitol Wrestling Center, especially now that they've seen it. Obviously, when WWE saw what AEW was doing with the wrestlers around the ring, they did it. When WWE saw how they were doing the camera angles, they did it. So I don't understand why Impact Wrestling is still going for the silence, the no fake crowd noise, the no wrestlers around the ring gimmick, because now that we've seen what they can do in the world of wrestling, it really shows when Impact Wrestling is wrestling there in silence. A few notable things. Daivari made his return to Impact Wrestling. and so did James Storm from his Impact Wrestling days to his failed NXT days, back to Impact Wrestling. Rich Swann, the champion of Impact Wrestling, reached the top of the mountain, I guess you could say. He was pretty elated. A lot of the guys from Impact Wrestling came out to celebrate with him. It's a big achievement for him, knowing all he's gone through in the world of wrestling and his wrestling career to get that achievement. But I will say, overall, I mean, the show was decent when it comes to wrestling. But Impact Wrestling needs to take a page out of WWE's book, and they need to do something else. Again, the fake crowd noise, still better than nothing. And if I could jump to that fake crowd noise, we were talking off air before this taping happened. The NXT UK event this afternoon took place around 4 o'clock Eastern time, where Walter took on Dragunov in a much hyped and billed match that went about 25 minutes for the NXT UK Championship. Walter did retain, but I will say that though they don't have wrestlers or fans in attendance at the NXT UK event, they still did have the crowd noise, so that did help a little bit. But overall, a decent show, or a decent match. The show itself, I was kind of falling asleep watching at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But overall, I think the match that they hyped up was pretty decent. It wasn't as big a deal, though, as I think WWE is trying to make it. They hyped it up on Raw. They hyped it up on Halloween Havoc, the commercial breaks. Like, tune in to NXT UK tomorrow. And NXT UK, yeah, we talked about before, doesn't feel like NXT. It feels like NXT's AAA team.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
Once you get out of NXT UK, you can move to NXT America.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I'll say this. I don't think, it's not a diss to the NXT UK brand. I think it's a great brand. But you're right. To me, I always say NXT is AAA, and I say NXT UK is the AA affiliate, so to speak. And I don't.
If you could go see a live event, you had between Evolve and NXT UK, what would you pick?
NXT UK.
All right, so you do hold it to a decent, because I think Evolve's, pretty decent.
I would say Evolve. I would say Evolve would be considered single A. That's just my opinion of it, because I do think with the NXT branding, I think it has that WWE stink on it, so to speak. So I think it's Evolve, NXT UK, NXT, and then you got Raw and SmackDown as the bigs. That's my take on it.
So, a couple weeks ago on SmackDown, Roman Reigns, Braun Strowman, the championship on the line, and a certain somebody put out on Twitter. Now, we alluded, I talked about it this week, so we here are talking about a week later. And that's a certain somebody named Goldberg who put out that he was very interested who won the match. It obviously ended up being Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns won again at Hell in a Cell. But it seems to be pretty clear that Bill Goldberg is not done with WWE, and Vince McMahon, many have quoted, said, doesn't really care what the fans think when it comes to Bill Goldberg making his return to WWE and the title picture. Brandon, I'm just going to assume you don't like it.
100% I don't like it. Come on. It needs to stop. He almost, he could have paralyzed the Undertaker in that match in Saudi Arabia. Like, come on. It needs to be done. As much as I respect Goldberg for what he's done, what he did was 20 years ago was good. In the last handful of years, it's like Brett Favre playing for the Jets. It leaves a bad taste in wrestling fans' mouths. He should have left when he was on top, and before way past his prime than he is now. Should have just left it be. They needed to stop poking the bear and stop bringing these old timers back. Leave them there. They obviously can't go anymore. So let's stop it now. And Vince. Here's the thing, Vince McMahon. I know he doesn't listen to anybody because he does what he wants anyways. But nobody cares anymore. Nobody wants to see Goldberg in a match. Goldberg could be a backstage producer. That's fine. I don't mind seeing Jamie Noble and Devon Dudley, those faces backstage. I don't mind that. Maybe they use him in the same role as Adam Pearce, I guess. But you can't have him in matches anymore. It needs to be done. It's over with. Let's just bury that.
He doesn't want to be in a role like Adam Pearce, because that means that he'd have to actually be there on a weekly basis. He doesn't want that either. He wants his cake and eat it, for lack of a better words, of just being there for a big-time match and then being gone again. Now, I'll say this much. If you're going to have Goldberg come back, I'm not really a big fan of it, but he did, I'll just say everybody kind of got screwed last year at WrestleMania, wrestlers included, fans included, with the gimmicks and the matches because COVID-19 happened. But I want to say to Vince, if you want to have Goldberg because you need the star power for WrestleMania, you want to make it a stacked card as much as you can, that's fine. But keep him out of the title picture. Give him a gimmick match. Give him a feud, against somebody who's not the champion. Whatever. But you keep him out of the actual weekly title. Because here's the thing. The title to some may be a prop, but it is a prop that is on the weekly television show. It is something that is there 12 months out of the year. Goldberg is not there 12 months out of the year. So give him something that doesn't involve the storylines of 12 months out of the year. The championships and the things that are the ultimate culmination should go to the full-timers who are there all year round. And that's weird for me to say that because, I like Brock Lesnar. And I, when Brock Lesnar was champion, I was okay with that because he in theory, he was there all year round, even when he wasn't physically there.
Stop. He wrestled a handful of times a year. Come on.
No, that's true. He wrestled a handful of times, but the thing is, he was the champion all year round, and when he wasn't there, he was still the champion, so he was still being talked about. Goldberg did the thing that The Rock did a few years ago, where he wins the belt in January, or in this case, Goldberg winning it in February, literally just to hold it to the next pay-per-view and lose it. Now, if Goldberg wanted to go on a year-long reign and wanted to show up once every 2 months to defend the belt, and that was the storyline, his dominance of just being able to come in, kick ass, and leave like the Roman Reigns, wreck everything and leave, then maybe I would have bought that. But if Goldberg I don't want him in the title picture because I don't want him to literally just win the belt at Royal Rumble and then lose it at WrestleMania and be gone again. If he wanted to win the belt at Royal Rumble and hold it to the next year's Royal Rumble and wrestle at every other pay-per-view, I mean, I don't want that either now because of what we saw last year with Goldberg. I'm pretty much done with Goldberg. But I'm just saying, that's the kind of title picture he's in. I'm saying if you want to hold the belt, have the aspirations to hold the belt for over a year. Do not want to hold the belt. You do not actually want to be the champion. That's what I'll say. Brock Lesnar held the belt. He wanted to be the champion.
Here's one name of somebody that I, maybe tongue-in-cheek want the belt on right now more than Bill Goldberg. It's our favorite celebrity who won the championship back in Syracuse many years ago. Our good, our love, the guy we love so much, wrestling fans love across the world, David Arquette. So did you watch the movie You Cannot Kill David Arquette? I got to get your thoughts on it before we get out of here today.
Okay, so that's a segue into our final topic of the day. David Arquette, the man who won the belt in Syracuse, New York. He thought, that, and I'll give it this much. So the movie is You Can't Kill David Arquette. It came out in August. Me and Brandon both had a chance to watch it last week. And first off, I learned a lot about David Arquette. I didn't realize just how serious he was taking this wrestling return. And when I say wrestling return, it's really more like a debut because his time in WCW was that of celebrity involvement, was that of Mickey Rourke or Snooki or any of these other people or Steve Amell or Jon Stewart. That was his involvement in wrestling back then. He just happened to also have the championship for a minute as well. So that was his involvement, though, back in the day. Now he actually wants to make that championship more legitimized by getting into wrestling for real. And the documentary is just great, showing him go from Mexico and wrestling, obviously, in front of no one, or before Mexico even, wrestling in someone's backyard, in backyard wrestling that was the most, like, when you think of backyard wrestling, at least a lot of people think of crowds or, like a federation to an extent. Like, no, this was what you and your friends did back in the day, and you just did it yourselves. You entertained yourself, and there was like 6 people. I don't understand how David Arquette was so stupid and kind of fell for this. He literally thought he was going to an indie wrestling federation when he showed up at these guys' backyard and got his ass kicked by some kids in their backyard. But, I mean, that guy, you got to give him credit where credit's due. Yeah, he took it seriously, and it's kind of a feel-good story. And you kind of feel bad now knowing what happened with COVID, that might have derailed more David Arquette wrestling. But, the guy went in there and took his bruises. And, I mean, the time where he got cut in the jugular right there in that one match. and had to be rushed to the hospital. I mean, but still finished, then went back in and finished the match. You got to give the guy, the documentary is great. You got to give him credit. And I love all like the celebrity involvement. I love, that they still are talking to Courtney Cox, his ex-wife. His current wife was behind it in the Miss Elizabeth gimmick. Like I said, feel good story.
Yeah, I agree. I thought from start to finish it was a really good documentary. It was crazy to see in the beginning where like he was trying to get into these different like legends of wrestling like groups to to showcase to get trying to get back in the business or earn his stripes that he never really earned, because a lot of people think and I agree, you got to earn your stripes to wear that championship belt that was so coveted, and he was put on it without going to the ballrooms and working his way up through the indie circuit. So I give him a lot of credit for working through the indie circuit, and also he fought Ken Anderson, in that last match. I thought he did okay. I thought he did fine. I mean, for a guy who's almost 50 years old, I would still say he's very much a novice wrestler. I thought he did for what he could. I thought he did well. And one other thing I want to mention, and of course me being a movie buff and a big fan of Luke Perry, whose son is Jungle Boy, obviously Jack Perry in AEW. I liked that. It was sad to see, because I believe if I might have this timeline wrong, but when they were filming the jugular thing that you mentioned, I think Luke Perry passed away just a couple months after that. So seeing him on camera was, it was for me. I've followed his career for many years. He's been on a lot of TV shows, a lot of movies. So it was kind of reminisced about his career for a minute. And then what I liked is they brought in Jungle Boy Jack, and they discussed how close him and Luke Perry were. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't know that. I didn't know they were that close. I figured they'd be friends in the business because they were in the business together, but I never knew that they were like best friends. So what I really liked, to cap off the recap, was I liked the fact that David Arquette and Jungle Boy put a match on in memory of the late Luke Perry. I thought that was great. I thought they did a great job with that. So I mean, overall, I'm clapping right now, because I got to tell you, I give David Arquette a lot of credit, because guess what? Nobody thought he would ever do this, and guess what? He did. So kudos to David Arquette. The documentary, I went in there with low expectations, and it was pretty good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, and you got to give David Arquette credit, because he is someone who started at the top. He is someone who literally was given the championship belt on a television show and then held it into a pay-per-view event. So for him to start at the top and then want to go back all the way to the bottom and take shit, like he hadn't already been to the top of the mountain. Yeah, I understand he's a celebrity and wasn't really like a wrestler at the top of the mountain. But most celebrities, if they're at the top of the, or only want to be in wrestling if they're at the top of the mountain. Jon Stewart doesn't want to go to house shows. Snooki doesn't want to go to a house show in Syracuse or an indie wrestling show. She wants to be at WrestleMania. She wants to be featured where, the lights are the brightest. So for him to be a celebrity pretty much in there to promote a movie when the lights were the brightest 20 years ago, and then come back and take shit for start, because that's the that he had to literally, like, I didn't realize this. I thought he would have still been somewhat of a gimmick that would have got his foot in the door. But the movie shows that no, he actually had to start just like me or you. His whole gimmick of being I was in WCW back in the day opened no doors for him. And he had to just start from scratch. He tried to use it to open some doors, and they were like, no, there's no line. We'll open the doors. We'll let you set up a table here to sell your 8x10s, but nobody comes to buy them, and nobody cares. And he literally had to start over, had to go to the gym, look completely different, had to actually work out. Couldn't just be David Arquette, the wild guy. Actually had to get in physical, good wrestling-looking shape to start from the bottom, go up, go through some shit, go through some stuff where he had to do, hardcore matches and death matches and get his jugular cut open and get bruised and get whipped and get beat up by some kids for no money in their backyards. So, like I said, kudos to David Arquette for being much of a wrestling fan that he would want to go through that. And more or less, taking his family, like his current wife obviously wasn't around then, and to kind of, show that about his actual determination, because they probably just chalked up his time in wrestling to being just one of the things he did when he was a big-time movie actor, and thought, probably why he's not a big-time movie actor nowadays is because he doesn't have the motivation. He doesn't have that kind of drive. and they might just chalk him up to being a big kid. So kudos to David Arquette to kind of not just show that he can do the wrestling thing, but I guess overall in his career himself, just not be someone who says, hey, let's sit on the money I made from Scream 22 years ago and just ride it out, and my career's dead, but who cares? But actually want to, redeem his name and to still be doing something with his life other than just hanging out and having Hollywood parties.
Yeah, I mean, good. I mean, kudos to him. I mean, I agree. I think it was. I was pleasantly surprised at how decent that documentary was. So, let me ask you this. I'll pose you one question, and then we'll get out. Do you think you'll ever see David Arquette on TV in a wrestling ring again?
Television, I would say that with everything going on right now, that is very tough. He's not getting any younger, and right now I don't see places like AEW, obviously. They obviously saw what happened with WCW, so I feel like places like AEW want to stay away from the gimmicks, because they're already kind of treated like the WCW of the current day. So, no, I don't see him in any actual television capacity. I would say if he was in any TV capacity, it would be an Impact or Ring of Honor, but it wouldn't be in WWE and it wouldn't be in AEW, but I still don't see that happening. I think definitely the whole COVID thing might have kind of ended the career before it really got a chance to retake off. I think he got accomplished what he wants to accomplish, and that's going back and redeeming his name and getting a few matches under his belt. A lot of matches under his belt, more than I thought, actually. He was wrestling kind of around the country for a few months straight. So definitely more than I thought to. Again, I learned a lot of things. I knew the whole trying to get back into wrestling, but I didn't realize he actually did get back into wrestling in a capacity and had been wrestling matches for quite some time.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't realize either that he jumped in as much as he did. He really jumped in. He got in better shape. He was healthy. He was doing great. Who knows what would have happened without COVID?
And he told a young pre-AEW MJF who was trying to be champion that you being the champion doesn't mean anything because anybody can be the champion. And David Arquette knows that more than anybody else. As we move into Full Gear coming up next week, moving on the road to Survivor Series, and anything else that happens in the world of professional wrestling, we'll be here to talk about on Heel to Face. So for Brandon Clements, myself at K-Rock, Jared, make sure to follow the program at Heel to Face on Twitter, subscribe, and get notified of all our episodes, and we will see you next week.